Shalom, welcome to my channel, Torah Talk with Tamar. I'm Tamar, and on this channel I talk about all things Torah. I'm a scholar of the Hebrew Bible for 18 years, and I invite other Torah students, Torah scholars, and people who are interested in returning to ancient paths of the Hebrew Way to discuss and chat together on my channel. Today, I want to talk about a very big, what I would believe, misconception about the Torah. One that has been repeated so long that it's almost believed as if it's attached to the Torah. And I'm going to challenge this concept today. And as I'm talking, feel free to drop your comments or wait till the end of the video and you can comment then too. Either's fine. So today I want to discuss and chat about whether or not humans can forgive sin. It is accepted throughout our culture that you have to forgive to be at peace within yourself, or that forgiving others of their sin is the right thing to do. And there are so many cliche statements, I really couldn't cover all of them now, but we've all heard them, right? We've all heard people being pushed to, you have to forgive, and this is the right thing, and if you don't, it's like drinking poison, and it just goes on and on. There's all these rationales, commentary, and people meaning well that will tell you that in order to be at peace, you have to forgive. And I'm going to say very boldly that the Torah shows us that humans actually cannot forgive sin. So in the Torah, there was a sacrificial system, and I have a great picture here. I'm going to hold it up. Okay, so this was the sacrificial system. The priests were inside this tabernacle area, as we all know. This is very commonplace knowledge. And they laid the sacrifice on the altar. And when they did this, the blood made atonement. I like the word atonement better than forgiveness. But Elohim, the Most High, the Creator, would forgive the sin. The sin was against Torah, the book of the Torah that Moses bound. And of course, we all know when the blood was given out on the altar, this atoned for the sin. It was Elohim that forgave the sins. Not one place in Torah do we see anybody ever laying their hand on somebody or telling their peer that I forgive you of your sin, because we have no power to do that as humans. To do that, which was facilitated by the priest but not given by the priest, was Elohim. So that's the foundation of the concept of forgiving sins. Okay, the Torah demonstrates that humans can forgive financial debts. So every 7 years, the people were to forgive the financial debts of their neighbors. We were able to forgive that. And that's the only thing that humans can forgive, is financial debts. We're commanded to. So this has a big implication, because sometimes people do try to hold forgiveness as some kind of weapon over people. Like, if I don't forgive you, you're not in good standing with the Creator. Well, humans have no control over that. And I also assert and hypothesize the view that if we surrender that role back to Elohim, that it's Elohim's prerogative and right to forgive somebody, that we will truly be at peace. You know, I'm a human being and I've had conflicts with others as well. And you know, this can create a dilemma in you. Should I forgive them? Should I not? Etc., etc. And as I began to learn Torah more, the book of the Torah that Moses bound, Torah, where we're given all the commands, the do's, the don'ts, and moral absolutes that we're to live by, it dawned on me that it wasn't my need to solve that dilemma, that I could send people back to Elohim, that the forgiveness was for Elohim to forgive, unless they owe me money, which has not been a common situation. But this is the foundational concept in the Torah. And when we get into the Gospels, the Messiah, Yahushua, makes many statements about forgiveness. But we have to remember that all of those statements have to be understood in their context, which is ha-Torah, where we are told how forgiveness is given on the altar by Elohim. The great Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, when he demonstrates to us how to pray, he prays for us to forgive others' debts. And there is nothing that the Messiah said that was inconsistent with ha-Torah. In Matthew 5:18, he says, unless heaven and earth pass away, until heaven and earth pass away, not so much as a jot or a tittle shall pass away from the law. So while heaven and earth are still here, we still are operating under the moral absolutes of ha-Torah that Moses bound. It says don't add or take away from this book. So anytime that the Messiah is talking about forgiveness, he's talking about financial debts. His parable of the person who was called in for his debts, it's all about debts. It never is saying that humans anywhere in the gospel suddenly have the right to forgive others' sins. We're commanded actually in the ha-Torah not to give forgiveness in some situations. And let's talk about that, because I know I'm going to get a lot of heat for this, but hear me out. And I know there are souls out there who have come to see this too. Drop your questions and comments and challenges down in the comment section. But give me a chance first to show this from Torah. There are more than 70 situations in ha-Torah where a person is told to cut off an individual or put them to death via decree of the judges. I am not saying to go out and murder anyone. This was all done through judges in certain sins. For example, an adulterer and adulteress must be put to death. We know that in Leviticus. Also, there's situations like in Leviticus where someone uncovers the nakedness of their relative. Okay, it says to cut them off. It does not say to forgive them. There was no blood atonement in ha-Torah for the sins that led to cut off and put to death. And most of all, most notably, that most people know, is in Numbers 15. It talks about being cut off from the person, from their people. This was permanent excommunication. There was no blood atonement allowed in these situations. Numbers 15:30. And I'm reading from the CJB translation, Complete Jewish Bible. And then I'm going to clarify a word afterwards. But an individual who does something wrong intentionally, whether a citizen or a foreigner, is blaspheming Adonai, that person will be cut off from his people, because he has had contempt for the word of Adonai and has disobeyed his command. That person will be cut off completely. His offense will remain with him. So I would clarify the word intentionally as a high hand. This is somebody who has a copy of the written Torah. They know something is wrong, but they choose to do it anyway. And foreigner is a ger, the people coming home to Israel. So it clearly says that there's no blood atonement available for this sin. His offense will remain with him. And this concept of permanent excommunication is also in Deuteronomy 29. I want to read this too. This is CJB translation again. Let's start at verse 18. It's 17 in this translation. So let there not be among you a man, woman, family, or tribe whose heart turns away today from Adonai or Elohim to go and serve the Elohims of the nations. Let there not be among you a root bearing such bitter poison and wormwood. If there is such a person, when he hears the words of this curse, he will bless himself secretly, saying to himself, I will be all right, even though I will stubbornly keep doing whatever I feel like doing. So that although dry, which means sinful, will be added to the watered, who are righteous. But Adonai will not forgive him. Boom, right there, verse 19, 20 in some translations. Rather, the anger and jealousy of Adonai will blaze up against that person, and every curse written in this book will be upon him. Adonai will blot out his name under heaven. Pause. Okay, and I know some people don't like Adonai, but to keep the flow going, this is CJB translation. So clearly it says Adonai will not forgive him. If you do your research, you will see, and those of you who have already done it know, that there are many instances in the Hebrew Bible where it says that Elohim will not forgive a particular person. That's what it says. And when the Messiah came to do his mission, he was not overturning this Torah. In all those situations, we are told also not to forgive. So is it true when people come to you and tell you that in order to have peace, you have to forgive? I'm going to say no. In fact, this common insistence, which gets extreme to the point of even shaming people for not forgiving, like you're a bad person if you don't forgive, it's toxic. It actually will poison your own body. If you do not cut off a person who should not be in your life anymore, you will be poisoned by keeping them there. If the Torah says to put them to death and there's no judges in Israel to enact that decree, you should cut them off. Because actually what's poisoning you is your unwillingness to cut them off in accordance with HaTorah. HaTorah, the book of the Torah that Moses bound, was the original no contact guide. We have all of this talking today about narcissism and when to cut people off, and all along it's been here in the Torah. Now, am I saying be angry, be bitter, hold on to this anger forever, etc.? No. And this is where the word forgiveness gets muddled, because there's so many different definitions of the word forgiveness. You can release the anger, you can release the memories, you can release what happened, but do you have to forgive someone in the sense of releasing them of their consequences or inviting them back to your life or saying, I forgive you? No. There's not one place in the whole Hebrew Bible where we ever hear one human being say to another one, I forgive you. Now, we have one example of Jacob telling Joseph to forgive his brothers. But again, this is only a recommendation from Jacob, who did not have a copy of the written Torah. And that kind of forgiveness is different. When someone doesn't have a copy of the written Torah, the Hebrew Bible tells us that they're not accountable in the same way. They're still guilty, but there is room for blood atonement in that situation. And that's a video for another day. Thanks for joining me on this Torah chat today, and I hope that discussing this will help those listening find peace in knowing that there's no moral obligation to forgive anyone, and that it actually is out of our capacity to do so as humans. And in order to walk in the way and find true peace, I believe we must surrender that back to Elohim. Shalom.